You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast, the podcast about all things metal and everything in between. A production of themetalrobot.com, created and hosted by Tom McKay. On the second episode of MRP, we sit down with Curtis Dewar of DewarPR and the Dumb and Dumbest podcast to expand upon what musicians can do during self-isolation. After that, we sit down with Collin Sterling of Thrashers Paradise to just talk about metal, because at this point, we all deserve it. Let's not waste much more time. Let's get straight into it.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
In the last episode of the podcast, I talked about what musicians can do during the coronavirus, what they can do to keep themselves busy, what they can do to keep their presence online. And while I also touched on what listeners can do to help out, this episode I wanted to revisit the topic of what musicians can do to help themselves out and what they can do to, in a way, keep themselves occupied, keep busy during this time, and expand on what they can do. And I wanted to expand upon that because in the podcast today, I actually have a special guest with me, Curtis Dewar. He's actually runs a PR company that I've been working with for the YouTube channel for over a year by this point, and I'm happy to get him on the podcast. Curtis, how you doing?
Doing great.
My God.
Good.
My sincerest apologies. While we're recording this, emergency alerts are going off just for Ontario. It's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. I'm doing good though.
Yeah. Okay. It's good to hear. So, it's perfect timing. I know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on the last week's topic in regards to what musicians can do. So I wanted to kind of go over what I talked about and see if we can also get your take on those, whether they are good ideas or if you wanted to expand further on that. Seeing as while online, while you do run a PR company, on social media, you also have a tendency to post short videos telling musicians, hey, this is something that you can do for certain topics, like what days are best to release and how they can prepare their albums for press.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of go over some of these topics with you, and we'll try to hopefully expand upon them or even just confirm whether or not they are great ideas.
Sure.
So the first one that I mentioned in the podcast was, for one thing, people are bummed out that they can't play shows at the moment for their local shows. Would you say that's actually true in a way, or is there a way around that?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, here's the thing, is that there's always live streaming, right? Like, a lot of people are doing that right now. I know there was the Code Orange thing, which I think was now 2 weeks ago. My dates are all fucked up now since being in the house mainly for the last couple of weeks. But I think it was 2 weeks ago they've been doing it. Metallica just started live streaming. Even bands without a name have started live streaming. There's no reason why you can't do that, even though you got this going on.
Yeah, like putting on a private concert at home, it's, I would say, a lot simpler nowadays than it used to be back in like probably the early 2000s or even way back in like the early days of metal.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I also, on top of that, there was a lot more emphasis on you now have a lot more free time to write and possibly even release music. That's something that I wanted to touch on because a lot of people, and I realized this not long after I released the podcast, the first episode, a lot of people might not have the ability to record music during that time. So what would you say to those who don't have the current capabilities like to record? What would you say to them if they still want to release music during this time?
That might be tough. What I would do instead is I would start focusing on promoting what you already have personally. Because, you can always do something about something, right? So like if you can't record, I mean, you could be writing music or you can just be promoting what you already got. I know one band is going to be doing a re-release of an album that got virtually no attention. Came out about a year ago, I think. And they're deciding.
May I ask what the band is, if I may ask?
I'm not going to say yet.
Okay, that's fair. It's confidential PR stuff. Nothing to worry about.
Confidential, but I do know of at least one band that's planning on doing this. And what they're doing is that they're going to just be re-releasing it, an album with different art, a couple minor different things. I think they were throwing on a demo track as well. but that makes it appear to be new and gives kind of like an emphasis for, that there's something here, right? Because most journalists don't want to review anything that isn't quote unquote new. So you slap on some new art, you put on a couple demo tracks or whatever, and boom, there you go, right? It's a new product, right? Like that's what Roadrunner's been doing for years with a lot of their bands. Metal Blade's done it too, right? They just put on a couple extra tracks, some new art, bam, it's a new product, right?
Brand new,
brand new, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, I was going to say is like it depends on how you position it, right? So if you got something sitting around that like had no press, like let's say that you yourself, Tom, let's say you made a death metal band called the Barn Babies, and you never got any press for it last year, and now there's more people at home. It's easier to get a hold of people right now. Why not just throw that, like put together a press kit, start sending it to journalists, and boom, you might get yourself some new attention virtually for free. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, of course, we got to get the Barn Babies going, man.
Exactly.
We got to get the press going for the Barn Babies. But for those who can record music in their home, like for me, for example, I have a setup where I can record music and even podcasts from the house.
Yeah.
Would you say this is a perfect time for those musicians to start releasing music now?
It depends. There's two ways of looking at it. So I'm going to give you a long answer here, so cut me off.
That's okay.
Well, it's going to be semi-long, actually. So here's my prediction, is that labels are going to start having releases, start releasing later in the year now, if this keeps up. So there's different predictions that we're all going to be back to normal in 2 weeks. I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I have no idea. But if it keeps going on like this, there's a very good chance that major labels are going to start pushing stuff back. My understanding is the Hatebreed album was just postponed indefinitely. I think it was Hatebreed. So if that's the case, and that's a pretty big band, and it starts getting pushed back, like all these other releases start pushing back, what's going to happen is there's going to be this big swarm of releases at the end of the year. There usually is, but there might be more. My understanding is Enslaved also just pushed back as well, who are another big band. So if that keeps happening as a trend, if you decide to record music now and release it later, you're probably going to be lost in a big sea of, big releases, because September to December are usually already packed months with releases. Usually it's like there's the most releases at that time of year. Like sometimes it's like 500 albums will get released in a week, right? So if you record now and you want to release a physical product, like I don't know how it is for releasing physical product right now. I don't know if it's possible to get, vinyl out. I don't know. I haven't asked anybody yet, but
in a way, we're talking about two different things here, because on the one hand, physical product might be a bit hard to move nowadays, like when everybody is self-isolating, but at the same time, there's also still the digital network, the digital stores where you can push stuff.
Exactly.
And I feel like going back to Hatebreed, I believe they pushed back their album. I don't know if it was at the request of the label or if it was just their decision, but there are bands who are still releasing. Like I know Trivium is still set to release their album late April.
Yep.
So is it a good time to release music?
Like I said, it depends, right? Because, well, let me finish the last thing I was going to say. So like, let's say if you wanted to release a physical product, it's probably not going to be happening till later in the year, is basically what I was trying to say, and you're going to be up against a lot of people. If you're going to release just digital, now is probably going to be the best. Well, maybe not right this second, but I would say probably May to June is probably going to be your best time. And the only reason why I say that is because, like you said, there's Black Dahlia, there's Trivium that are still releasing. There's another really big fucking band whose name is escaping me, I know is releasing. But I mean, there's a lot of product being pushed back right now. Like a lot that I can see, and I think there's going to be more. So if you picked like a May, June release date right now, and you're a smaller band, I think, this is a pure guess, you're probably going to get more press and more attention as a result of that.
Well, yeah, because like you said, a lot of the bigger bands, they are pushing their stuff back.
Yeah.
Now, do you know why that might be, by the way? Do you think it's because of the fact that they can't push?
It's the festivals and shit canceling is my understanding. I haven't really talked too much with people about it, but from my understanding, a lot, like most major bands are built around touring, right? So if they're releasing an album, they're usually going to have a tour around it. So if the tour is no longer happening, you kind of got to move it back or readjust your schedule, right? So
but bands like Trivium, where their lead vocalist has a huge presence online, especially on Twitch, that might not be the biggest problem.
Well, with Trivium, I don't know if that's necessarily the reason. I think the reason with this is pure guess. I don't know. I've never asked anybody at Metal Blade. I have no inside connection, but this is a pure guess. My guess is that the release date was already announced, and Metal Blade probably just wants to get the product out there so that way they can get some income coming in during the slow times. That would be my guess, because I noticed they're also not backing up the Black Dahlia murder either. And I know that Black Dahlia also recently did a tour of South Africa and a few other places. So they probably want to just make sure that they can. They're probably thinking it's worth it more to release now than rescheduling due to other factors. That would be my guess. Pure speculation.
Of course, pure speculation.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that I wanted to go into, one of the other things I mentioned was that musicians during this time, if they don't want to make music during this time or anything like that related to the band, they can try and just build a presence online at the same time. So like building their social media presence, keeping active with fans, or even then trying their hand at being content creators on the internet. So either making videos for YouTube or streaming on Twitch like Matt Heafy has been doing for quite some time. Stuff like that. Do you think that's a good idea?
100%. I always think a band needs to be promoting themselves no matter what the time period is. And if you haven't been, now is the best time, because here's the deal. A lot of people are just sitting around at home watching Netflix and playing video games. A lot of people are. So as a result, you now are able to get more attention. I mean, it's really easy to contact people right now. Like, here's an example. I sent an email the other day to Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big and, like a lot of well-known bands, right? And, like someone of my stature is usually probably not going to get a hold of Billy. He answered. He answered. Like, I asked him to be on my podcast. I was like, whoa. Billy Sheehan actually fucking answered me, and he said, yeah, I could probably do that. And I was like, wow, that's fucking insane, right? So I mean,
everyone has a lot more free time nowadays, right? So
that's the thing. His tours are all canceled. He's probably sitting at home catching up on his email. He's like, oh, there's a podcast? Sure, why not, right? So I'm like, oh, wow, that was a lot easier than I expected, right? He hasn't confirmed yet, but I mean, I got the answer back, right? So I think, like, if you can, like you said, like if you're putting out content right now and you're actively putting your face out there, there's a huge opportunity to talk to people that you never would have talked to before.
Well, on top of that, YouTube, like making YouTube videos has always been kind of easy. I mean, YouTube pretty much started off. You look at the big names in YouTube right now, and the ones who started off, like Smosh and Ryan Higa, they all started basically as bedroom projects. So you can make content from your bedroom. Hell, that's pretty much what I am still doing to this day with YouTube. And I can name plenty of other YouTubers, smaller YouTubers, who are still in that vein. So in a way, there's really not much of an excuse to not get started in that.
You kind of got to use the viewpoint of, like, how are you going to use your time right now? I mean, you can use your time just to kind of like take a vacation and waste time, or you can use it to do something productive that might enable you to move forward to your goals, whatever that is. Even if it's not like creating a fan base, even if it's, like you said, just making music, getting some ideas for songs, learning a new skill. There's all sorts of different things you can be doing right now. The main thing to do is just to go into this with the idea of, how could I now use this extra time to my own advantage? Like, I mean, I haven't slowed down my work since I started. Like, I actually increased it. I started, doing a bunch of things for free for people. Just doing even more than I possibly could, right? Because one thing I do know is, it's like, if you stop, it's going to be very hard to start again. So you might as well just kind of continue and look at things from the viewpoint of, how can I produce something, instead of like, how can I get through the day? You know what I mean? Right.
Well, also because musicians, I'm guessing if you're in a band, you already have a creative mindset.
Exactly.
So use that brain to your advantage in this time. So the last thing I mentioned for musicians in the last episode, this one I feel like might be a bit constrained. Like, this might not actually be much of an option, but if you have merch to just plug your merch as often as you can.
Yeah.
Is that an option during this time? Because I know...
Well, there's no deliveries uninterrupted right now that I'm aware of. As far as I know, Canada Post is still operating. So is the American Post and all the rest of them. So why not? You know what I mean?
Right. My main concern though was because I also was doing research while of COVID-19, of the coronavirus, and it did say that because it travels through respiratory droplets, that can track through clothing. So it might. So that's why I was thinking it might be a bit more difficult to plug, say, a new T-shirt line. But if you're going to do that, then I guess you probably would have to keep safe while doing it, like wear gloves or wear masks that you can't breathe through.
Yeah, you might. I haven't researched that much on that. This is the first time I've heard that, so I don't know anything about that. That you're the first person that's mentioned about the male being affected. Yeah, but I mean, I haven't really been looking because I mean, I'm a PR guy. I don't necessarily sell merch, right?
No.
So, but you know, as far as, but I still see a lot of people selling T-shirts and selling the CDs and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, be careful, I guess. But I mean, if you're worried about it, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I would still be plugging my merch as long as I don't have COVID-19. You know what I mean?
Well, because of that little tidbit about, you know, clothing can contract COVID-19. I mean, it shouldn't be that big of a deal if musicians don't have it.
Yeah.
But I feel like in this regard, what would you say if bands do have a merch store? What would you say would be the main product that they really should push if they are going to be pushing their merch?
Well, now that I know about the shirt thing, which was a new thing to me, I would be pushing the music end of things personally. Like, I mean, honestly, like that's the main thing, right? I mean, like, and the other thing too is like, I mean, Amazon's still open. Like, there's so many places that are still open. I mean, if it was that serious, I think we would have been told by now we can't buy anything. You know what I mean? So again, I'm not a doctor. There could be information I'm missing, right? Hopefully I didn't say anything controversial there, but yeah, I mean, just focus on your music. I mean, that's the main thing, right? Like, you can sell downloads to your heart's content, right? You could also
downloads can't contract coronavirus. So
exactly. You could also have it, you know, we'll ship after the after this whole fiasco ends, right? There's all sorts of different things you could possibly do with it, or like you said, even just handle gloves, you know, disinfect the box type of thing. You know, I mean, but in all honesty, I mean, I would just focus on selling the music personally.
Yeah. Well, those are the ones I mentioned, but I did want to touch on one more thing for musicians. If they're not doing music as their full-time job, and their full-time job just let them go temporarily because of the coronavirus, obviously they have to apply for whatever form of employment insurance that their country provides. But what is that something that would you say is the most important factor to focus on during these times, aside from your music business?
100%. Like, you mean like it's focusing on the sale of your music, or did I misunderstand the question?
Well, focusing more on trying to make sure that you're still receiving income from whatever employment insurance you have, or if you're an essential employee, an essential worker during these times, like if you work at a grocery store, or if you work in, I guess because Amazon's still up, I'm guessing warehouses are still open.
No, I mean, like, do what you can to make money is the basic principle I go off of with that, right? So like, it's like, if you can figure out a way of monetizing your income, like especially if you just lost your job, do it. I mean, obviously apply for employment insurance and all the rest of that too, but you know, do whatever you can to like start trying to hustle and make some cash with it, because here's the main thing to remember, right? This is all going to end at some point. Like, it will end at some point. No one has said this is the end of the world as far as I know. It's going to end at some point. So, I mean, the main thing to focus on and realize is that it's going to end. And when it ends, there's going to be a lot of bands that have broken up because they couldn't handle the stress of not being able to tour or not being able to, you know, create music together or whatever, even though you can do live conferencing and all the rest of that, I know. But I'm just saying there are going to be bands that break up due to this. But there's also going to be a lot of bands that have used it to promote themselves and create new music that are going to come out ahead because they were doing something instead of just like, you know, not doing anything, right? Like, hope that didn't come across as cold or anything like that, but it's kind of
No.
there's going to be bands that break up as a result of this. So if you have a long-term goal of making it in the music industry and actually playing music, you can use this to your advantage by continuing and putting your face out there and just creating more, instead of just kind of like, treating it as like a vacation, or, freaking out and just reading the news about whatever the latest conspiracy theory is. Right. So, which is hard not to do sometimes, I understand, but
it's the internet. Conspiracy theories are going to be the main thing that people are looking at during this time. I guarantee it.
They are. I mean, I did the same thing. I mean, you click on someone's tweet and like, oh, I wonder if that's true. And then you click on the next tweet, and then it's like, all of a sudden you're convinced, Donald Trump is going to murder us. And, Justin Trudeau's got the gallows sitting there waiting for all of us. Right. So, you can either spend your day doing that, or you can and like I said, I know it's hard not to, because it's like everybody's like freaked out about this. But I mean, the main thing is just to focus on how can I use this time to expand what I'm doing versus letting it all contract around me, because everything is going to contract around you. But you can also be someone that, doesn't get hit too hard as long as you continue to promote yourself. Like Trivium's a great example. Like you said, they're not pushing back. They're not pushing back. They're pushing forward. I've seen all of their people are like active on social media still. So it's just like they're continuing to promote themselves, and I can pretty much guarantee you that Trivium's going to still come out strong as a result of this, even if they lost some of their income from touring.
Yeah,
so
this is essentially a testing point, a stress test for any bands to show who is in it for the passion of the music, who really wants to move forward in the music industry, and who is basically just doing it because they wanted to start a band out of high school.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
That's when right.
Yeah. Okay. So aside from all that, is there any other tips that you would suggest for bands and musicians to utilize during this time when they are all stuck at home?
100%. I would say get on your social media as often as you possibly can and start interacting with people. But what you want to do is, again, don't start looking at all the conspiracy theories. Don't focus on all the crap parts that are happening. What you want to be doing is you want to be interacting with potential fans and current fans, and you want to be talking about your music, talking about that type of thing, because the thing is the bands that do that are going to be the ones that do well. If all you're doing is sitting there and, like I said, retweeting the conspiracy theories, getting sucked down into a rabbit hole, and you're wearing
trapped.
Yeah. So, and watching Outbreak all day and all the rest of it, it's not good. And all that's going to happen is you're going to be depressed and you're going to be freaked out, and it's not good. So you want to focus. Like, here's a good example. Like Tom right now is using this time to interact with people. He just reached out to me out of the blue, said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" That's a very good thing to do. I reached out.
Plus, you can't catch coronavirus over Skype, so this is obviously a very good opportunity.
You can, and people can do lives, Instagram lives. You can do Facebook lives. You can just reach out to people and talk to people. Like most days, I'm doing an Instagram live daily, almost every day rather, on my channel, where I'll interview random people. Like, I'll probably ask you one of these days, but I was going to have, I'm going to have Monica Strutt on tonight. I talked to a South African band last week, another band from Zimbabwe, another random band.
Was that Nuclear Winter from Zimbabwe, I'm guessing?
That was one of them. Yeah. Dividing the Element with the other. So, I mean, I just start talking to random people. And the reason why is you're helping someone else promote themselves, and you're interacting with people as a result. And the more you're communicating with people, and the more you're actually, doing things to keep yourself out there, the less you feel stressed yourself, and the more you're helping other people by letting them communicate and not focus on all this negativity that's going on, right? So that's my long-winded answer for that.
All right. Well, Curtis, thank you so much once again for coming on the Metal Robot Podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on. And is there anything you want to plug before we sign off for this segment?
Listen to my podcast, the Dumb and Dumbest podcast. Yes. Tom has been a guest on it. I think it was like 6 months ago, if you can find the episode.
It was quite a while ago. Yeah.
And we will have you back. You just got to remind me, because I've got my week scheduled this week. But if you remind me, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yes, I'd be happy to do so, of course.
Cool.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
So at the current moment of recording this segment of the podcast, the metal world is in pure disarray right now. And not just the metal world, but the world in general is in pure disarray. It's fair to say that the virus that's going on right now has affected a lot of businesses, but there's still a lot that's standing. TV shows are still going on. Many musicians are still going with live concerts, but also, more importantly, in terms of this segment, internet content creators continue their businesses from their home. And the good example of being able to do that and working with your limits is Collin Sterling of Thrashers Paradise, who is a good friend of mine from college, and he does great interviews on YouTube. Collin Sterling, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the intro, by the way. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. So I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk to you about, just first of all, how has everything been on your end? How's everything going in self-isolation?
You know what? It's actually been pretty good. Been spending some time with my little brother, family, girlfriend, all that fun stuff. But the most important thing is been listening to a lot of great new metal that's been coming out.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. So wait, okay. So you mentioned girlfriend. Have you actually locked down with
yes,
the girl that you brought to Rockers Without Borders? Congratulations,
yes.
Good sir. Congratulations.
The girl you met. Yes, thank you very much.
I kind of figured that's going to happen eventually. You two were, if I may, so cute together. So cute.
Thank you,
so cute.
My good friend Tom McKay. It's all.
All right.
Yeah.
So your channel, from what I can gather, has been largely unaffected by the current state of the world. Tell me about that.
Well, if anything, it's gotten more better, I feel, because of the fact I know how to do Skype interviews and the fact I've been doing them for a while now.
Mm.
So I felt that was a big advantage in all of this. Like, because of this, I was able to interview a metal band from Italy, Nanowar of Steel.
Ooh.
So it was very much a, hey, this is a cool thing. I probably would have never been able to do this if this wasn't happening. So
no kidding.
Thanks, quarantine, I guess. But no, just doing a lot more Skype interviews and trying to come up with some skits to do at home with my stepdad.
Mm.
It's just when me and him are together, we bring out the best and the worst in each other, and and that includes comedy-wise as well. We have the same sort of style, so you never know. One of these days, I could upload like a metal version of Super Troopers for some ungodly reason, and it would make sense to me and my stepdad. And if you haven't seen Super Troopers, then you might need to do some extra background research.
Well, I personally have not seen Super Troopers, but I have met your stepdad, so I can't wait for that thing to happen. So yeah, you're doing a lot of stuff at home, obviously not really going out often, but because of that, from what I found, aside from the obvious of skit interviews, or Skype interviews, sorry, most of your interviews were usually done in person. And has this limited the amount of interviews you've been able to do, or has the quarantine kind of greatly expanded the amount?
Honestly, I feel it hasn't really affected that much. Like, again, I always didn't want to overbear myself with so many interviews, whether it be in person or online. But the only real reason I truly love the Skype interviews more than the in-person ones is because I can talk to bands from like Vancouver or even the Northwest Territories if I was able to find one from there with no issues because of Skype. Now, I do love the in-person ones, don't get me wrong, but for me, I'm very limited to that because of where I am, and it only would be the Southern Ontario scene. Like, the furthest I'm willing to go would be Oshawa, outside of Toronto, and the more down I'm willing to go is London.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if something was to come up, I would consider it. But this whole Skype thing is kind of really, I find, better just to getting more connections with more places across the country and even the world.
Wow, that is definitely. I definitely agree with you on that one, especially in this current day and age, this current timeline of what the fuck are we going to do now? It's very much that a lot easier to bring the world together into one collective banner, which I would say metal has always done, but in terms of what we are dealing with right now, it's definitely done it a lot more. for you as well, but I've also done so on my end because I have more free time, and I'm assuming other people do too. Much like what I'm pretty sure you're doing, I've been sending out emails upon emails to a bunch of people to get them on the show, get them on the podcast, to talk to them. I'm shooting my shot with Rob Scallon. I'm shooting my shot with Jared Dines because why the fuck not? I recently locked down an interview with Sunfire TV, a Twitch drummer, who you really need to check out. She's really cool. But a bunch of other stuff too. And of course, I contacted you for this podcast, and plenty of other people I've contacted as well. You were probably the first priority, of course, because you're just awesome. But
thank you.
But a long story short, we're in a time where it's obviously it makes a lot more sense for people like us, people who interview musicians, people who interview people, to get in contact with more people and get them on the show. Has that been something that you've been doing? Have you been shooting your shot with a bunch of people?
Yeah, like before this whole thing broke down, I originally had plans to interview a power metal band from Vancouver, a very popular one, signed to Napalm Records, to Unleash the Archers.
Oh, really?
And yes, but that got canceled because I was supposed to interview them at their show on March 16th.
Oh.
And that got canceled, and it was just like an aw. So I'm still trying to work something out with them. I've been given the email information to a certain member to talk to, which when I was given the email, I was very like
very good at
fangirling. Yes. So, but still waiting for their response and hoping to work something out. To go on that, but a different direction, I actually had a musician themselves contact me and be like, hey, would it be possible to do an interview with you? And it was just like, wow. This is a thing that's happening. This is awesome. Yeah, of course, would love to do that.
Honestly, you're not alone. I've had people even contacting me like, hey, I'd love to be on your show. And I'm like, what? Okay. What? I don't usually end up getting asked to be spoken to. That's a weird thing. Usually I have to beg people to talk to me. In this case,
exactly.
In this case, they're looking out like, hey, you're cool enough. I want to talk to you. I'm like, what is this feeling? I'm so confused. But moving on. No. So speaking of Unleash the Archer, because you were talking about that you were going to end up talking to them at one of their live shows. Do you miss live events at all?
Honestly, yes, because I was supposed to be attending 2 album release parties, and they've both been canceled, which broke my heart. One was for my good friends in Raider.
Okay.
And another one was for my other good friends in Lucero, which was a show that was supposed to happen in Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more heartbroken about that because I've never been to a metal show in Hamilton.
In Hamilton, it's hard to come by. There's not a lot of metal venues in Hamilton, Ontario. The only one I can think about is that taco joint.
Oh, the Doors.
Yes, that's the one. Even I've never been to it. Wasn't that one?
Oh, no, it was supposed to be at a club called Absinthe.
Oh, okay. I've heard that one.
Yeah, it's fairly bigger, and a lot of the bigger local bands will go to that one because they know they can get a crowd.
Mm.
But on the topic of concerts, there's still one album release party for a band I've interviewed called Cryophilic that hasn't been canceled yet.
How?
And that's at the Doors, and the Doors policy is it will not be canceled until the day of. And it's mainly because you can only purchase tickets in person day of.
Oh, okay.
But also on the topic of this, talking more about a actual well-established band, I got this notification yesterday that Swiss folk metal band Elvite announced a tour.
They announced when's this tour happening?
Oh, it's happening in September.
Really?
And it's a North American tour. I was just like, oh, this is a cool thing to see.
Well then, okay then. That's definitely interesting. So I wanted to ask you, because I know you like collecting, not collecting, but you like having physical copies of music. Like I've been in your vehicle. You like having physical CDs.
Yes.
There was a recent tweet from Chart Data on Twitter. They confirmed that the physical album sales have actually dropped below 1 million for the first time ever, like this week. Do you think that's a bad thing, or is it nothing to worry about in terms of music sales?
Well, I just want to go off and say that's a heartbreaking thing to hear as a album collector and a physical CD holder, but I do understand where it's coming from because a lot of record stores are shut down due to this.
Yeah.
And, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are hesitant to order stuff online now because of this whole COVID-19 going on. And you can't really blame people for that. I don't blame them personally, but I don't think it really will impact music sales because there's still streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and even Bandcamp where with Bandcamp, you can still purchase downloadable versions of the CDs. So I'm not really worried about that for the musicians because they're still going to be able to make money. More so even now from an online standpoint because there are going to be so many people at home that are going to be bored and just want to listen to music, especially metalheads. So,
do you think that's going to negatively? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think that's going to negatively affect the musicians who are selling only now online, especially seeing as now people are out of jobs and most of them would prefer streaming over actually buying the digital copy? I have nothing to confirm that, by the way. I have nothing to confirm that. I'm just going off of what I would personally do at that point.
Honestly, that never even crossed my mind, Tom. But now that you said it, probably that will be the case. Because with like Spotify, you're only paying for it once a month instead of having to buy a new digital copy every single time. So it's me just realizing that now breaks my heart also. But again, I'm pretty sure bands will be able to survive and still be able to make some money off of the hard work they put in because for some ungodly reason, all the local bands that I know are releasing new material this month. And it's hard to see that it's really backfired, kind of, sort of, in the way of trying to set up shows and stuff like that. But hopefully they're able to come out on the bright side at the end of this and have some profits from CD or music sales.
Yeah, I hope so too, personally. Just because right now it's a difficult time for a lot of musicians, especially those who rely on touring and merch sales to stay afloat. For local bands, that could easily be a big problem because if they aren't just relying on touring, of course, but they are relying on merch sales and album sales. So would a good takeaway from this be to actually purchase albums instead of just streaming it?
Yes, that would be a very important thing to do. That would really help the bands out in this harsh times because bands in general don't make a lot of money.
They really
off
don't.
Of their live shows, and merchandise is the only real source of income.
Well, yeah, I would agree so too. If for good reason. It's for one thing, record labels don't exactly support their own bands in most cases. There are obviously record labels that do support their bands because they understand killing the golden goose is a fucking horrible idea. But there are bands who don't have that luxury, and those who are also unsigned, relying on tours and merch sales. So yeah, I definitely personally think that listeners, we need to purchase albums more often than streaming, especially seeing as, streaming is cheaper, but you could still purchase the album and still listen to it any chance you freaking want. The only difference is you're actually supporting a musician. That's the way I see it, of course. That's the way I see it. So given the fact that we're all stuck inside and tours are canceled, concerts are canceled, when do you think bands will start performing shows again?
Honestly, I feel that once this whole thing blows over and Canada gets the green light to start doing mass gatherings again, I can see a lot of local bands setting up shows as soon as possible at whatever venues they can find to do it at. Because regardless of how long this takes, bands will always have that itch to perform. So I have a very, very, very high belief that once this is done, you're going to be seeing a lot of the local metal scene here in Southern Ontario just have a mass amount of shows to attend for bands like Raider, Invicta, even Lucero, Duskwalker, Astroth Incarnate. Shout out to Sam. Just gotta put that there.
Of course.
Of course. And even artists, bigger name artists like Lindsay Schoolcraft, who sadly have to postpone shows and even the Junos. But
I know.
I
was so sad to hear that.
I was too. But hopefully she gets an award.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, you can still mail her the award like, hey, you won.
Yeah, because those things aren't made of like fabrics, so I'm guessing they can't contract coronavirus. At least not as well as clothing can. So that's definitely they should do it. I think they should definitely do it. They definitely need to do something like that. So going off of what I asked you just a second ago, because I got that question because metalsucks.net, they posted a poll recently asking the readers and viewers when bands might start touring again. And the general consensus out of just under 900 people who voted, over 200 believe that it'll be September. And that's the majority thus far in this poll, or that two bands will start touring in September or October. Do you think that's a reasonable estimate, or do you think maybe it's even sooner than that?
That's tricky because, again, Canada, especially here in Ontario, we have extended our quarantine another 2 weeks. So God only knows. Even in my city of Hamilton, like the other day, it was announced that we had 70 more new cases.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna agree with those 200 people in saying September would be the right time for bands to start announcing tours and start touring again. Only because we're entering kind of the months where kids, especially teenagers, will be going out to beaches and stuff like that, not caring. Yeah, that's what's upsetting me is that they don't really care.
Stay home, people. Stay home.
Stay home. Stay home so we can enjoy life again. But, hopefully, I would love for it to be earlier than September, but I can picture September being the real start to concert season again.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's when things will start to spike in terms of, not only concert goers, but also albums coming out?
I don't think albums coming out will really stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, it's hard to say because there were a couple bands who did push back the release dates because of this. So
that is true. Bands like Killiterus announced that they will no longer be releasing their album on 420, which upsets me.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah. Missed opportunity there. But again, talking to other bands like Invicta and Houndskull, they're already working on their next albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was talking to a good friend, bass player to Invicta, and he announced, we're finishing up the recordings to the new Invicta album.
That would be, yeah. Well, let's hope that they can get it out soon, especially seeing as, sales might not dip in terms of digital.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say. It's still hard to say.
It is hard to say.
It's still very hard to say. So what do you, but on that note, what do you have to say to the 28 people who voted that it would be like later 2021 or beyond?
I'm not upset with you, but I'm also not proud of you, kind of thing. Like, I don't want that to be the case, but if that's the case, then okay, I guess I can live with it.
I'm just saying this right now. If it takes until the latter half of 2021 for touring to start up again, the music industry is not going to survive this decade. I can assure you of that. Oh my God. But Collin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's really appreciative. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners right now who are interested in who you are?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at @thesterlings_paradise. Also, make sure to follow Thrashers Paradise on YouTube, Instagram, and our Facebook page. Make sure to tune in because as of yesterday, we have a brand new video up on our YouTube page of me interviewing Mississauga stoner metal band Houndskull and their latest release, which came out yesterday, March 30th, Low. It's a great album and definitely something I recommend checking out. Tom, I just want to say thank you so much for thinking of me and having me be part of your podcast. I would definitely love to do this again. This was a ton of fun.
Of course. I would be happy to have you on as many times as necessary. And I would love to get you on another time. But once again, thank you so much for stopping by and just shooting the shit, talking metal. Because
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because in this day and age, that's all we can really do to stay sane.
You just listened to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Metal Robot Podcast. You can check us out on the internet as Metal Robot Reviews, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also check out everything we do on one single source, themetalrobot.com, for videos, reviews, press, and so much more. Thank you so much for listening. Click subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the mosh pit next time. Have a good night.